When I think back to the house I grew up in, it wasn't perfect. The carpet was worn, the walls were scuffed, and the furniture was a mix of hand-me-downs and whatever my parents could afford. But what it lacked in polish, it made up for in personality. Every corner held a story, and every imperfection carried the imprint of the people who lived there. Us. But today, I noticed something different. Homes are no longer simply the backdrop to our lives. They've become stage sets, curated and broadcast to the world. And the marks of living that once made a house feel personal are now seen as flaws to be edited out, replaced with something more camera-ready. And that's not a coincidence, because our relationship with our homes has changed. And maybe the biggest reason for that is the rise of the algorithm. Social media feeds don't simply reflect our tastes, they shape them. The moment an image goes viral, it establishes a new baseline. Suddenly, thousands of people around the world want that same boucle cloud sofa with pillowy tufts, that retro corduroy couch in mustard yellow, that orange accent lamp glowing like art, and that wavy statement mirror that practically jumps off the wall. But what interests me today isn't that sameness, which I've talked about before. It's the way algorithms push certain moods over others. Let me explain. Bright, airy kitchens with matte black fixtures thrive on social media because they're so photogenic. Bedrooms with a single chair set at 45 degrees perform well because they compress neatly into a square frame. Even our emotions are staged for the algorithm, always cozy, calm, aspirational. These aren't accidents. They're what the platforms decide to show us. And once those aesthetics dominate the feed, they start to dominate real life. Because the algorithm doesn't just flatten styles, it flattens our expectations until anything outside its narrow palette feels wrong. And that shift changes not only how we decorate our homes, but how we inhabit them. But here's the irony. While online aesthetics push us towards sameness, the physical world of design has splintered in another direction entirely. Walk into a major city and you'll see the fingerprints of gentrification everywhere. What used to be local bars and family-run diners are now craft coffee shops with exposed brick and Edison bulbs. Apartments that once felt idiosyncratic have been gutted, rebranded, and outfitted with quartz countertops to attract the next tenant at twice the rent. It's not that these places are ugly, they're very often beautiful. It's that their beauty has become strangely hollow, stripping away the spirit that once made these spaces matter in the first place. Because a home, at its best, isn't just walls and furniture. Just like people, homes are most compelling when they're vulnerable. Yet somewhere along the line, we as a society decided vulnerability was weakness and perfection was the goal. But what troubles me even more is the way the market has learned to manipulate our desires, quashing the things we once genuinely valued and replacing them with a narrow script of what we're told to desire, planting the seeds of ideas in our minds that were never truly ours. That isn't design, that's design inception, or what I'd call deception. Because once taste is engineered from the outside in, we don't just lose our authenticity, we lose ownership of what our homes truly mean. A kitchen no longer reflects the meals you actually cook, it reflects the aesthetic you've been taught to broadcast. A living room doesn't evolve with your life, it's staged for a future buyer you've never met. So maybe the real question isn't whether the home you grew up in still exists. Maybe it's whether we're brave enough to build homes that feel vulnerable again. Spaces that carry the fingerprints of our lives, not the watermark of an algorithm. Because in the end, a perfect home might impress strangers, but only our home will embrace us when we need it most. And yet, the irony is that even in our most private spaces, we rarely give ourselves space for imperfection anymore. And that shift shows up in the tiniest social moments, moments we hardly even notice. Think about what happens when someone comes over to your home for the first time. Before they've even taken off their shoes, many of us rush to explain ourselves. Sorry the place is such a mess. Sorry I still haven't finished decorating. Sorry about the couch, it's just temporary. These apologies come out automatically, almost like muscle memory. But what are we apologizing for? None of those things are moral failings, but we talk about them as if they are, as if they reflect something shameful about who we are. Our homes aren't just places we live, they become stages where we manage impressions. And through that lens, every object feels like evidence, every corner like testimony. And hosting becomes no longer about offering hospitality, but instead about controlling the impression we give off to the people around us. But this isn't how it always was. Growing up, my parents always tidied up before company came over, but they weren't losing sleep about whether their furniture looked dated or their curtains aligned with global design trends. Their concerns were immediate and human, making sure there was food on the table and the bathrooms were clean. The judgments they prepared for were judgments rooted in local, personal relationships. But what's different today is that the judgments we fear are no longer local. They come from an invisible audience built from hours of scrolling through interiors online. The endless stream of travertine coffee tables, checkerboard rugs, bubble candles, and neutral lime wash walls. And once you've seen enough perfect spaces, it's impossible not to measure your own against them. And that means that your friend isn't just your friend anymore. They're a stand-in for that whole digital chorus. The millions of living rooms, kitchens, and bathrooms you've absorbed without even realizing it. And that chorus creates a new kind of pressure, one that's harder to name because it feels ambient. It doesn't come from any one person, it comes from everywhere at once. And so when a guest steps into your space, you feel the weight of that collective comparison. And you're not just showing them your home, you're showing them how it holds up under the weight of that comparison. No wonder your apologies come out so quickly. And in that moment, your home stops being a sanctuary and starts becoming a stage. And you, its performer. But living this way is exhausting. Our home, which should restore us, becomes another place where we feel inadequate, measured against a standard we never chose. And that inadequacy seeps into us. If our home isn't good enough, maybe we aren't either. And that's the quiet cost of this shift. Hosting was once generosity. Come in, share a meal. But now it feels like exposure. Come in, see if I measure up. The living room, the dining room, the guest room, even the bathroom, they all become less about what they offer you and more about what they broadcast about you, which leads to a deeper, unsettling question. When we apologize for our homes, what are we really apologizing for? Is it the scratched coffee table or the fear that we don't measure up to the world we've been taught to aspire to? A home is, in many ways, an autobiography. Every space we live in records us, not in words, but in arrangements, layers, and traces of time. The mismatched plates and mugs collected slowly over the years, the fridge covered in magnets, notes, and small tokens that only make sense to you, the wilting plant that somehow keeps holding on to its terracotta pot. These are sentences in a story that only you can tell. And this is what makes homes different from anything else we design. Many things can be beautiful, but nothing carries memory like a home. The hallway isn't just a passage, it's where you paced back and forth during your breakup. The couch isn't just a place to sit, it's where you collapsed after that long week. The dining table isn't just a slab of wood, it's where birthdays, arguments, and laughter stack themselves over the years. None of that can be staged. It has to be lived into existence. But when we treat homes like products to be optimized and compared, we lose this narrative depth. Products are finished. Their purpose is to be bought and replaced. But stories aren't. They change with us. The same bedroom that once held toys and floral wallpaper can later become a retreat filled with books, flowers, and quiet rituals as you grow older. The same hallway can feel empty and anonymous at first, then years later become lined with photos and memories. A home isn't a static object. It's a diary that evolves alongside us. That's why signs of life matter, not because they make a space more authentic, but because they give the story continuity. The dining table isn't just furniture, it carries the flower-dusted afternoons where kids learn to roll pasta and bake cookies. The walls aren't blank surfaces, they're reminders of the years when children couldn't resist turning them into canvases, layering scribbles and paint like entries in a diary. And the couch isn't just worn because of time, it sags under the weight of countless afternoons of jumping, playing, collapsing into laughter, and living without restraint. Without these details, a home becomes generic, interchangeable, and stories that could belong to anyone end up belonging to no one. Think back to the homes you've loved. They're not the ones that were pristine, they're the ones that held you in a chapter of your life. The chaos of roommates crowding into a kitchen, the solitude of a tiny studio where you first discovered who you are, the strange comfort of realizing, months after moving in, that a new place finally felt like yours. Those memories are what give spaces their soul. So what would it mean to design with this in mind? Maybe it means creating rooms that welcome change, furniture that shows its age, walls that can hold layers and layers of paint. Maybe it means valuing not just how a home looks today, but how well it can absorb and reflect a lifetime of little moments. Because in the end, the question isn't whether a home looks good in a photo or sells for the right price. The deeper question is whether it can hold your story, whether it can carry the weight of your ordinary, unphotogenic, irreplaceable life. A perfect home might dazzle for a moment, but a home with a story endures. It's the one you remember decades later, the one that shaped you, the one that still carries your laughter in its walls. And maybe that's the measure that matters most. Not how flawless a home appears, but how much of you it refuses to forget.